there was some breaking news a while back, which was the Franco-Swiss airport of Basel-Mulhouse has now been evacuated for security reasons. This comes after the French high-speed railway was paralysed by massive coordinated arson attacks just hours before the Olympic Games opening ceremony. What is going on? Well, someone who might be able to begin to answer that question joins us now. It's Colonel Simon Diggins. He's military and defence analyst and former defence attaché in Kabul. Simon, it's great to have your company. I mean, wow. When you look at these big international events, these spectacles where the whole world tunes in to watch, they're perfect theatres for hostile regimes and terror organisations to try and create maximum disruption. When I read this morning, or heard this morning, in fact, as it was breaking about the French train lines being sabotaged by arson, the first thing I thought was Russia. What about you?
No, absolutely. It was so massive, so clearly coordinated. And as you say, the whole world is looking at Paris, looking at Olympics, a perfect theatre to cause disruption. The immediate proximal cause, of course, is that Russia is banned from participating in these. But it's part of a much wider pattern of arson, criminality and disruptive attacks across Europe that Russia has been engaged in really at least since the end of the start of the current Ukraine war.
Yeah, I mean, people aren't particularly aware that there have been arson attacks here in the United Kingdom, largely against weapons manufacturers. Absolutely,
there was a warehouse burnt down in East London. That was you know, another warehouse fire, perhaps. But the other thing had all the hallmarks of kind of plausible deniability. Is like a sort of fingerprint of the FSB, the Russian intelligence agency. Everything they do, there's always this plausible deniability. Even when they murdered Prigozhin, the Wagner group leader, plausible deniability. Somebody else could have been going for it from there. Always just slight distance from it. And interestingly, what they're now tending to do is rather than use FSB agents as they did when they attacked, or it was military intelligence agents when they attacked in Salisbury, they're now using freelancers, they're using criminal gangs, they're using individuals who they've compromised, and they will use them rather than have their own agents potentially exposed and brought out into the open.
Let's now talk about what is going on when it comes to this Manchester airport incident. The optics, I think, you know, whatever one's sympathies, however much I want to defend the police, and we don't know the context around this particular, well, you know, pretty bad optics. What do you think about all of this? Because people are messaging me going, how come there's no audio on that video? How come it's clipped at a specific moment in time? How come it's gone viral? How come this Mr. Yaqub has popped up out of nowhere and is suddenly on the scene and stirring up agitation and, you know, calling it an assassination and citing George Floyd? Is this just sort of the domino effect of opportunists, or, you know, could I read something more into it?
I think there are elements we don't fully understand at the moment, and I think the Mayor of Manchester was very sensible and very balanced and said there's a lot we still don't know about it. But there are elements of it which, as you rightly say, a bit like the theatre of this, actually suggests there's an element of controlling what information went out, when it went out, the editing, I say the lack of audio, the lack of context. I mean, listen to your police officer who was on before the break, talking about not understanding the whole detail of this, and also recognising what the situation was for the policemen, you know, who were forced to deal with violence. 3 of their colleagues had already been hit, and yet the only message that comes out is this message of peers to chime with allegations of police brutality, racism, and everything that goes with that. I mean, it's a classic potential propaganda thing. I don't know the details. I think the mayor mentioned was right to say, Bernard was right in saying, hold off, let's have the details. But in terms of what we came to talk about, in terms of what we've seen with Russia and the rest of it, this is exactly the kind of thing that they work on. We know, for example, they've been weaponizing migration. We've had them actually on the bound borders of places like Belarus, pushing migrants over there, knowing that it's a hot button issue within UK and within other countries within Europe. They weaponize the arguments around racism. So, I mean, while it might be a very long stretch to link this to what we've just seen in France, I think we've seen the same kind of methods of employment there. Controlled violence, controlled activity, which nonetheless has an impact, a propaganda impact, significantly greater than whatever actually happened on the ground itself.
Going back to Paris, there was a video circulating online. I hadn't sort of verified whether it was officially a Hamas video, but basically inciting violence against the Olympic Games in no uncertain terms. They held up something that looked like a sort of giant blooded head of a young girl. It was pretty awful. Have they actually got the capabilities? I mean, this is a massive security operation for France. Speaking to the Telegraph's sports editor, who's over in Paris at the moment, he said that almost every single hotel room is occupied by police. The city's on lockdown. There's no public transport. How on earth spectators are going to be able to get to events and watch it under those circumstances? I have no idea. And yet they're facing multiple threats, whether it be from Hamas and terrorist organisations, whether it be from these coordinated sabotage attacks, which we suspect could be related to Russia. I mean, it looks to me like a powder keg that could just go up.
I think that's it. And I think that it can go up either way. You know, I mean, the famous, rather cold boast of the IRA after the Brighton bombs. You have to be lucky the whole time. We only have to be lucky once. Applies very much to the way in which terrorists operate. You know, Mao taught terrorists very well. You know, you kill one, terrify 25 others, and that's sort of the response you're going to get from terrorist activity and everything that goes with that. And similarly, there could also be, it does happen, an overreaction, a bad reaction from security forces, which then creates the propaganda as well. And indeed, as we know, you know, the grim attack of Hamas on October the 7th was essentially designed to draw in and create an Israeli reaction, and from whence they could then develop their kind of propaganda from that. So, you know, provocative attacks in order to create a more dangerous, potential podicate, to use your words, situation is very much part of what a terrorist group, or in this case Russia, might be seeking to do.
Yeah, and it's where I sort of drew a sort of loose comparison between what we saw at Greater Manchester Airport, and as you rightly say, we have no idea what has gone on there, and we need to learn more before we jump to conclusions. But there's certainly one man, Mr. Yacoubi, is trying to stir up havoc, to put it mildly. Let's talk about now Kamala Harris, who she's now been endorsed by the Obamas. That was always going to happen. But she's been sort of talking tough when it comes to meeting up with Benjamin Netanyahu, saying, I will not be silenced, and she is pressing for a peace deal. Do you think that's going to have any impact on the way that he goes about his business when it comes to Gaza?
No, I think probably, sadly, not. And I say that truly because as somebody who absolutely believes in the right of Israel to exist and also the right of Israel to defend itself, and that means responding with significant force to what happened on October 7th. So I've no truck with those who said that Israel had no right to do what they did. Absolutely had the right to respond, which they have done. But nonetheless, what we've now is in a situation is whereby the ultimate prospects that I think we'd all look for and hope for in the Middle East of some kind of peaceful solution to this, however difficult, however rocky the road, are now very high. And let's not forget, there are still hostages there. You know, these wonderful people who've been caught up now, you know, in utter misery for months and months and months, nearly heading up towards a year. You know, we need to find a way to get them out and to find a solution whereby, however long the road is, the people of Israel and the people of Palestine can live together. And I think what Kamala Harris is saying is very much what Biden's been saying now for months to Netanyahu. We absolutely support you. We'll always defend you. We'll always make sure you will exist. But you cannot do that at the expense of not only the Palestinian people, but if it was like recognizing there is a court of world opinion. Israel exists because the court of world opinion effectively willed it into existence, and that still applies. Doesn't matter how many arms, how many weapons we provide you, if you don't have a sort of legitimate place in the world, then and people recognize you as a legitimate country, and your right to exist as a legitimate country, then you will not exist. It's one of those awful situations Israel is in. They can turn themselves into North Korea. They can turn themselves into Eritrea, but actually that's not what Israel was about. And I think that's that kind of sense of the ideal of Israel is really, really important to the world.
Oh, it's going a bit crackly there, Simon. We were getting some brilliant thoughts from you and commentary, but the audio's gone a bit funny and wibbly-wobbly.